Good afternoon. Thank you, Cardella, for having me, and thank you for creating this space. And thank you for creating iOS, International Women Entrepreneur Society, that strives to showcasing and featuring women's successes, creating a networking platform, and to always supporting, really acting like a support system, not just in business way, but also as a sisterhood. So it has become more of a sisterhood than just another network platform. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure, and I welcome everyone who's with us today, or whoever is going to be watching this session on the video, on the recorded video later on. So and hello everyone. So when Cardella called me and said, we're running this series and I want you to talk about your business. And then she sent me, a draft of the banner that says, Hanane Benkhallouk talking about her business. Just hit me like, okay, what am I gonna really talk about? What does it mean my business? I don't want it to be a pitch. Then I thought, what is my business anyway? So it's not like I was born and I inherited the business of my dad, or I finished school and then I was told, here, take money and start a business. And actually, before I got here, it was really a long journey. So talking about my business means talking about what got me there. And then so it is really my journey. It's a ride. It took many years and it took a lot of stops and different stops. And then I thought, okay, so that's stops. And it was, those stops had high and low. And then the idea of the Ferris wheel ride came to mind. So I thought, let's just give it an interesting metaphor, because it's really going to be about telling a story and sharing my story rather than just coming and boldly pitching a business to you. Because at the end of the day, we're a community. Yes, we want to support each other. We want to see how we can help each other with our respective businesses. But at the end of the day, it's the relationship that matters. And business happens as an outcome. And I think that's what happens in the business world today. Because whatever you create or whatever business you start, unless you really come up with invent some high tech, even that after a few months, somebody else will copy it. My point is that nobody is having a unique idea or a business, but what matters is how you present it. And it's about the relationships that you create, and then business really becomes an outcome. It's no longer pushed, but rather how do you pull business towards it? So I'm going to share some slides just to talk to you a little bit about how my Ferris wheel ride and how this journey looked like. And I'm sure each of us had her own journey. And let's see, I just chose a few stops that really shaped me and that really got me what I am today. And this is how it looks like. So yeah, exactly. So when we look at the wheel, the Ferris wheel ride, it's, it takes us to highs when we have that big, beautiful vision that we see from the top. And then comes a turn where we go back really down and we don't really see anything, and we just keep waiting until it goes back. And it's different stops, and we see different views from different sides, whichever way we want to focus on. So it's fun, but it also, we see things from different perspective. And it takes time by the time you go to the other vision. And that's why I chose this metaphor. So for me, where did it all start? And I think I'm privileged and lucky and blessed to call 3 major cities home. Because now, the world we live in today, it's very hard to even answer a simple question. Where are you from? And I go through that every time. Every time I start talking to people, obviously, it's especially when you live in a country where a majority is expats. So it's a natural question when you meet someone that they ask you, where are you from? And to me, it hasn't been a straightforward answer. I cannot just say I'm from there without having to stop and say, well, basically there's 1, 2, 3. Those 1, 2, 3 are right here. So my first stop, I was made in the city of Casablanca. So this is how I present myself and I introduce myself. I was made here. It's a great city. I chose this picture because it shows the majority of it is the Atlantic Ocean. And I have a huge connection with the ocean, especially the Atlantic Ocean, because it's wild, it's unpredictable, it has those highs and lows. It's so I identify my identity a lot. It's deep, it's boundless, and it's generous and it's rich. And I lived right across from it. So I would wake up to the smell of the ocean, and I'm so connected to it. And that's why I chose this picture. Of course, Casablanca is a big city, is a tough city as well. So that's what I was born when I grew up and started my initial education. But there was a stop there as well that I only realized later when I looked back 20 years later, that when I studied in Casablanca, my native city, I chose science and math, which makes me, now today we talk about the STEM careers, which makes me a STEM student. So I was in science, I studied science, physics, and math. And that only happened because the system of education back home was that whoever has the highest grade goes to science. It's not like you choose, okay? So I went to science, and then again, so we have like 5 years of primary, and then 4 years of junior high, and then 3 years of high school. So that's the 12 years that everybody has before you go to university. So I chose, no, I didn't choose actually. I was pushed towards science because I had one of the highest grades. And then when I moved to the last 3 years before university, again, we have another change that happens. Only 2 from each classrooms go to what we call in Morocco bac C in French, because the second language is French, which means maths and physics. And I happened to be one of those 2, so I was pushed there. What I'm trying to say here is that, how did that impact me today? So I was pushed towards something that I did not really choose, just nobody was there to really orient me or say, what is it that you want to do? What do you want to be? It was just about competition, having the highest grades and say, yay, I'm part of those 2 who went to math and physics. But then I went to business school afterwards. So I didn't go to engineering. I didn't go to medical, I didn't go to science, I didn't go to do physics research. And that didn't hit me then. Only later on, I said, I am a dropout. When I look back, I am a STEM dropout. I could have been one of those scientists, could have been one of those architects or engineers, but I haven't seen role models around me. I haven't had mentors to show me what are the benefits of going into a STEM career. So I chose business school probably, and now I'm looking back, I mean, I was 16 when I chose that, or 15. And I thought, engineer, maybe I have to wear a uniform and a helmet, and I always wanted to look pretty and sexy and be in a business suit and a dress. And, you know, we might laugh at it now, but when you look back, it's all these stereotypes that grow with us within gender stereotype roles that prevented me from pursuing what I should have, probably, to have more women in a majorly male dominated field. So that one stop that contributed to what I do today happened in Casablanca. So after going to business school, which was not bad because I went to the best business school in Morocco, which only accepts 160 individuals from across the country, and that's a country of 30 million. So people who pass high school, probably there are hundreds of thousands, or at least, I don't know, 20, 30, 40,000. So only 160 are selected. It's a very tough process. So that wasn't bad. I shouldn't be really complaining, but I just wanted to make the point of how it switched, how my journey switched in that first stop. So after finishing those years of college, because I had my brothers who lived in another great city that I call home, and then I moved to New York City, and I was shaped here. And again, I say shaped because all of us know that New York is another world. I mean, people tell me you lived in the US. I'm like, no, I lived in New York City, because living in the US is one thing and living in New York City is completely another thing. So for me, that was the start of shaping me, because I'm coming from being home, being spoiled, pampered, you know, with the care and love of the parents, not having to do much to take care of myself, being driven to school and all of that, with everybody looking like me, speaking like me, sounding like me, to going to another city where everybody looks different, it's different language. English is my third language, by the way. Now I'm fluent, but I only started studying English when I was 17. And and I chose this picture again with the two towers that don't exist anymore. I could have chosen a new picture because I was there when it happened. And that was part of my shaping. When 9/11, 2001 happened, I was there. And we had to be locked in our office where I was studying and working. We weren't too far. It was tragic. It shook us all. It was frightening, and it definitely contributed to the shaping of who I am. That's why I chose this picture. Of course, I learned a lot in New York City. I did my MBA there. It was the first time I'm exposed to different nationalities, different ethnicities. First time I take the metro and I see so many crowds and everybody's different. And so all of that, and also the snow. First time I live in a city. I mean, we have snow in Morocco, but just not in my city. So dealing with different weather, different conditions, different life, although it was easier for me because my brothers were there, but still, I had to take care of myself. I had to be working and studying at the same time. I'm very grateful to that experience because it really, really contributed to a lot. But then that wasn't the only stop, the 9/11, that made me also feel that, am I really welcome here with my identity that I'm so rooted in, which is being Arab Muslim? It started, although, going to New York when you're barely 20 is, that's the dreams, the American dream. We were looking at the movies, everybody, I think every teenager somehow wanted to live that American dream. And I had that easy because I had a home and everything. And I'm grateful for that. But after what happened in 2001, in 9/11, it really made me start questioning, is this really the place I want to continue in? And that question started. Meanwhile, another incident happened that's part of my, so that was the high. And then I went to the low with what happened in 9/11. But then again, I went to the high where I discovered one of my talents, or one of the stops that contributed to what I am today. When I was there, I met this lady, a young lady who was barely 19, and came to New York because she was married in Morocco, obviously, to her cousin. And as she was growing up, that was the only dream she had. But you would relate, especially if you come from Middle Eastern cultures, that a lot of girls would be just, she knows that she's engaged since she's 12 or 14. Not engaged officially, but just like somehow she hears the parents talking about, oh, this one's gonna marry that one, and to her that was what she was aspiring for, which is great. I mean, everybody can make their choices. I look at it, and that's what I'm talking about in my one co-authored book that's coming called Women Who Inspire. I talk about this stop, and I say that when we were growing up, we were watching all these series and all these cartoons, the Disney cartoons like Cinderella and all, and it all ended with married happily, and then they lived happily ever after, and that was the end. Nobody showed us what happens after that happily ever after. What happened to Cinderella and Prince 5 years down the road? Nobody made any cartoons that would show us how it's managed. So many of these little girls, including many of us, keep in that mind that happily ever after is really a destination rather than a start of another chapter. And so this girl had that as well. So coming to New York, she did achieve that. The man came on a white plane, not a white horse, but he came on a white plane, took her back. But then it wasn't really the happily ever after that she imagined. And I was introduced to her when she had separated from him, completely devastated, not knowing what to do, didn't complete her university, obviously. She got married very young, didn't really focus or even think about having a career, because for her, that's the life she had chosen, to be a wife and a mother. But then it didn't work out. So what is she going to do? Going back home was not an option for her. She was so scared and afraid of being, bringing disgrace and all of these things that we all know in the culture. So she wanted to give herself a chance since she's already there in the greatest city of the world. And when I was introduced to her, I wasn't much older than her. I was still 21. And I'm like, okay, what do we do? She doesn't even speak English. And I started talking to her. I'm like, how much can we help her with money? We can't. She has to make a life. It's not like she want to go back and we can help her 1 month, 2 months, or buy her a ticket and send her. So as I kept talking to her, I found out that she had a hobby when she was young of making jewelry with her hands, beads with beads and all. And to make a long story short, that hobby, so I found myself using my fresh MBA skills to help her create a money-making business. So initially, we just contributed, us and the community, and rented a table for her in one of the flea markets in New York. You know, those flea markets where you just have a table and you sell to everyone in the weekends. And those are like mobile markets. So I started going with her in the weekend when I'm not studying. So telling her to watch me, and I was selling jewelry with her. It was great. It was fun. And showing her how to sell and how to market and how to take people's phone numbers and emails, so that she can send them, you know, later on when there is Christmas or other occasions and all that. So basically, I did not know that I was coaching her to become an entrepreneur. So that was the start of me creating spaces that are advancing women, but at the same time coaching entrepreneurs, which has become almost 20 years later, or at least 15 years later, what I'm doing today. But that was the initial start in that Ferris wheel ride that I wasn't even aware of. And as I'm telling you, I looked back and then I started seeing how these patterns all happen, because we don't just open our eyes and say, oh, I want to start a business and this is the idea. No, there are things that take us there. And for me, that's what I wanted to share with you. So to me, that was my first success. When I look back, and whenever somebody tells me, give us a woman who inspires you or inspired you, I don't think of famous people. I think about this woman, because not only she inspired me, I owe it to her to have identified that talent and that passion and that love for creating those spaces that I'm doing today on a larger scale. So 2 years later, she owned her shop, she became successful, independent, got married again, had kids, beautiful. So that's the major stops that I wanted to tell you about what brought me, what I learned from being in New York City, and what got me to what I'm doing today from that stop over there. So as I said, since 9/11, started really thinking, what am I going to do? Going back, I felt it was too slow. Being home, I got used to the fast pace and all. So I was visiting my sister in 2004 in Dubai, and that'll be my third stop. Third stop as in general or major places where I lived. So it's 3 continents when you look at it. It's Africa, America, and then Asia. And that's what when I look at that, when I introduce myself, I say I was made in Casablanca, I was shaped in New York City, and until today, I'm grateful to be thriving in Dubai. So again, it was a coincidence, just like being in New York staying in New York was a coincidence, because I was supposed to only finish my studies and go back. But when I found that skill, I just continued. And then visited my sister in Dubai in 2000. I visited in 99 or 2000 when she just came. And then I visited again in 2004. I was just running away from, we had really bad storms like they had last weekend. And I was coming in March. It was great weather over here. I wanted a break. And she told me, you're not really happy anymore. You're just floating from career to career. You're just doing small jobs since you left your job, and you're really not liking it. Because I had that low of really being for a year and a half, not having a major job, because I worked in investment banking, I worked in finance after my MBA, and I continued helping small entrepreneurs, mainly from the community. It was more of like a social giving back to community. But then it turned out to be a small consultancy called C2C, Concept to Completion. But it wasn't, I was just floating for a year and a half. Do I go back? I went back home, stayed 3 months, didn't think that I could live there, went back to New York. It was more like a sabbatical. And for a year and a half. So my sister was telling me, why don't you think about coming here? It's happening. They really appreciate people who have American education or Western education with Arab background. Like, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. And so another, just over a discussion with somebody who happened to be Arab American as well. And I was just having a coffee to learn a little bit about Dubai and does it really have the potential for me or not. I thought I'd go back and start looking, maybe I'll consider it. It's nice, why not? It's sunny, it's not New York, but okay, that's what I was thinking at the time. And I was having that discussion. That gentleman thought, as I was telling him about my background, that I started also franchising, consultancy, because when a lot of community members started coming to me, helping them to start their business, they wanted also advice if they wanted to buy a franchise. So I found myself obliged to go and do a course. So I became a franchise consultant, certified franchise consultant, which I still am, helping people choose the franchise they want, or helping people who have successful business convert it into a franchise and exporting it everywhere. Because of that, that's why I had forgotten to mention that, but it only came alive with my move to Dubai. So that person said, oh, I know a group who are looking for your background and same experience. And so my sister was like, you have nothing to lose. You're still single. If you don't like it, come for a year. I'm here. And I miss you, just come here. 1 year, you don't like it, you go back. That 1 year became 16. I'm still here today. So 2 months later, came to Dubai, started working with on the corporate level, working with one of the diversified groups here, managing one of their franchises across the Middle East and all. But at the same time, I still had that soft spot of helping the entrepreneurs, small ones. And I was introduced by somebody from my surroundings to one of these local Emirati young entrepreneurs who wanted to present to the Sheikh Mohammed establishment, which is the fund that it's still there, that funds local entrepreneurs who have ideas, but they needed to present a business plan. That was something that I learned to do since I started working with that young woman. So as I was introduced to that gentleman, later on I found out that that gentleman worked for the executive office of the government of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and my candidacy was presented to a project that was still being established, and that became later on Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Foundation. And I found myself being called to be interviewed for the position of manager, or later on being in charge of innovation and entrepreneurship programs across the Arab world. And to me, that was shifting. That was the shift, that really turning point of my career, because being part of that, it was my first experience with an NGO, was my first experience really working, besides the small things that I was doing for the community in New York. I was paid to make the world a better place. I was paid to create more entrepreneurs. I was paid to contribute to the development of our region, what I belong to, what I really feel rooted. And that was priceless. So being exposed to some studies from that the foundation was in charge of, which is one of them was the Arab Human Capital Challenge, finding out that there was a big gap between the education system, or what our kids, or what we have learned, and I've seen it, and probably that's what made me think about me being a STEM dropout. What we study in our schools does not really prepare us for the workplace. And being exposed to those results that came from a proper study that's interviewed more than 6,000 C-level executives across 18 Arab countries, across 16 different industries, and being exposed that we lack critical thinking, we lack innovation, we lack all of that. And that's why major companies still hire expats, because they don't feel that the local, and when I mean local, I mean the whole Arab region, they're not really prepared. It's more about rehearsing. And that's how we studied. Whatever I give you, you give it back to me. We were not allowed to question the teacher. The teacher knows it all. And not questioning means you cannot create something new, which means you cannot innovate, you cannot be creative, because you're not supposed to question. So all of that made me think, wait a second, do I really want to continue being the person who participates in identifying the pain and the problem, or the diagnosis of the problem, or do I want to be part of the solution? So that's was how I moved to becoming a consultant. That's why I said I cannot talk about my business and saying I have a business without talking about what led me here. I didn't just wake up and say, let's start a business. It was when I saw in a study done by the World Bank that the Arab world would need 100 million new jobs by 2020. The study was done in 2008. I don't know, oh my God, what kind of government could absorb so many graduates? I mean, we have 65% below 25, and it's just going to continue like that. So here started the third stop that made me feel this is actually, it's not the third stop, it's the major one when I said, you know what? And actually after the foundation, which I would have retired in that job, except that again, another low. So that was a high. You see, you're coming with me in my journey. You've seen so many highs and then again, so many lows. So the high was being privileged to work for such a foundation, to have the name of His Highness, who to me is one of the major transformational leaders in the world, creating this, what you see in the picture out of the desert, having his name part of my CV and having a business card that carried his name is really a blessing that I'll be forever grateful for. That having, whenever I say my journey, I have to say his name. It's really great. So that was the high, because it's really an honor to be working on something like what I just said. Working on the macro, on the infrastructure of building human capital, of creating innovation, of making us move towards a knowledge-based economy. So all of that, it's really, you know, I never took it for granted. But then the low came because if you remember the financial meltdown, the 2008 crisis, everything changed and a lot of priorities, governmental priorities changed. So found myself out of the foundation. But that mission and vision, that's it, became engraved in my mind, became my purpose. So that stop working for that foundation, I think, was meant for me, part of my ride, to really identify that it was like the pattern was really cemented. I mean, I had all these small events and small incidents that I spoke to you about, but then being there was like, wait a second, Ulrika, I found it. This is exactly what I want to do. Because after the foundation, I did have another job in the Dubai International Financial Center with a European bank, investment bank. I was director of marketing and communication across the region. But after 2 years, less than 2 years actually, I just thought, you know what, this is not for me. I don't think I can go back to corporate world and to the money-making business that is just about making more money for other people and getting a fat check at the end and, you know, living the life at the IFC and having the lunches on the balcony and the beautiful, you know, the beautiful lifestyle, which is good. There is nothing wrong with that. Everybody wants to have a good life, but it just wasn't enough anymore for me. And I just thought, and I always say, I'm really grateful that I reached that point and that realization at an age where I can still give, because some people don't reach that until it's almost too late to do a lot of activities. So I quit and started Sustain Leadership, which is the business Sustain Leadership consultancy. But before that, going through that, so those were the major 3 stops, where I was made, where I was shaped, what I'm not just surviving, but thriving. But in between, going back to more stops on my Ferris wheel ride, there were many, many stops that what I had to show grit. So it wasn't smooth. It's just like, okay, I worked in the foundation, privilege. I worked in the IFC. I was really one of those successful corporate, making my way, up in the ladder. But it wasn't. And then I said, okay, wait, let me start. And then it went smooth. No, it wasn't smooth. Sometimes it felt like this picture that you see between those rocks, like it wasn't smooth. It needed grit. That's why I put this picture. I had so many pictures, but because I only started this morning, I just chose quickly some that could really visualize how the ride was. So sometimes it felt like really that trek that I did in Sri Lanka and being trying to go between those rocks. Sometimes it felt, actually at the start, it felt just like that jump that you see there that I did in Zimbabwe. I just went on a free fall. Yeah. I was, I had a cord but around my waist, but it was still a free fall, and it took grit and it took courage. And I learned a lot from this trip. And many of you probably have read my reflections on this picture on my Instagram or probably heard me say it. So it did feel like that. But what did it need? Just like when I took the decision to do that, I just said, you know what? Life is about experiences. And life sometimes puts you at the edge, just like when I was at the edge of that mountain. I looked down and it was 150 meters. I was so scared. I was shaking. You can only imagine, right? But I said, wait a second, but if I don't do it, I might miss an opportunity of seeing the Victoria Falls and beautiful view. And that's what life is about. But so I had to have that courage. And I had to also have the faith, because faith is something we speak about, but we don't practice. Faith is really about doing something and being sure that you will be okay. Being sure that, okay, I'm taking a risk, but I'm not going on a free fall without a cord. I am taking this security measure. So having the faith that there will always be that cord that gives me that safety. So I had to embrace those values that I lived in that experience to be able to start seeing the view and the greenery like in the other picture. I had to be able to do unlikely trips, like when I went last year to Jerusalem, and it was before the peace treaty was signed, and I just had a sense that the change is coming. Nobody knew. I mean, I'm not close to anybody political. I had no idea, but I sensed it, that it's right to go. And that's what we need when we want to create a business. We cannot always base it on data. We cannot base it on a sure outcome. We have to be ready to throw ourselves like I did there. We have to be ready to have that big view and see things green and visualize them. We have to be ready to, when it's really tight, that we still move through it, and we have to sense that it's right and do something that is unusual. I mean, it was very unusual for somebody Arab who lives in the UAE to take a chance and go to a country where there's a lot of controversy, but it felt right. So sensing things, having that grit and courage, having that visual, like looking at the big picture, and having the resilience to go through the rocky moments. I just wanted to visualize some of my virtues through my life and through my experiential learning with these small pictures. It was a lot, again, my journey included a lot of meetings, again, I just chose some of pictures. I had to sit, this was again, one unlikely trip when I went to Pakistan and was sitting on top of that mountain. Oh my God, I have a blog about my trip to Pakistan. It's beautiful, you're gonna love it. It just showcases, it was also courage, because who thinks about Pakistan as a place for tourism for a woman? But I did it. And when I sat on that mountain top and I was looking, it was breathtaking. So it's really about connecting the dots. So these are all moments, part of my journey that shaped me. When I met Sophia the Robot, you've heard about her, right? The AI, the first AI who has the Saudi citizenship. So again, it was about connecting the future and knowing that, okay, when I met her, I felt the world is going to be transforming. I want to do something about that. It was about that, one of the initiatives that Kadila talks about is the Lean In, which allowed me and enabled me to meet Sheryl Sandberg, with whom I'm in the picture in San Francisco in her home. That picture was in her home. So again, what brought me to Lean In was going to Moroccan villages, like you see in this picture. This is an initiative that is done by women whom I have the highest respect, that opened a school for girls from the rural areas, because in Morocco, many villages in the rural area, they only have study until primary school. So 5 years of schooling. After that, whoever cannot afford to take their girls to the next city, to the closest city, they would just have them drop out. They either get married when they're 15. Thank God now they cannot get married before 18 by law, but still some people do it, they do it just like religiously and they marry them, or they end up being maids for, the rich. So these women who I'm part of, and that's one of the social initiatives that I'm humbly proud to be part of, they raised funds and built a school. That hosts more than 250 girls, like you see them, so beautiful. I want to cry every time I see it. And They are fed, they stay there, they sleep there, they go to school, and it's free in Morocco, but it's just like their homes are far. So they had to create this dorm for them. It's a huge responsibility for somebody to trust you with their girl in a big city, but they made it. It's been there since 17 years now. And that was one of my visits to that place, because to me, I wouldn't want to see another girl have the same, um, you know, have the same future like that girl that I saw in New York, or not being oriented. So whatever I saw in my journey, trying to participate. So these are just like sporadic pictures. So spending time with Saudi women, I go a lot to Saudi, creating those. So the initiative of creating spaces for women to thrive and creating the Lean in Arabia, which is the sophisticated name of it, it's really just an end. But actually what the underlying message is this is the future we're going through. It's going to be digitized world. Are we ready for it? I want to make sure that we are ready for it. It's about looking at these girls and creating more spaces for this. It's about enabling more female leaders, like in this leadership program that I was part of in Ajman. And it's about being on stages as well too, and creating this event that was one of the first TEDx that spoke about women and how we can advance the female agenda. So again, being in Zimbabwe or working with the refugees, the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon in this picture, or going to Vietnam and really empathizing with women. So my ride took me to all these different places. And that's why you can tell now why I'm upset that I haven't traveled for 1 year, because look at these pictures, you can tell how often I used to travel. So this picture, for example, was part of an initiative called Women Are Medicine that we did in Zimbabwe. That was the same trip where I jumped off the cliff. But the main why I went there was for that. And I stayed in a village, a sustainable village with no water. I didn't take a shower for 4 days. I had to live it. I mean, you can't just be talking about helping people without empathizing with them. And empathizing with them, you need to live their life. We can't just be sitting and making charity events and show up with the diamonds to raise funds. I'm so against that. I'm not judging it, but I'm so against it. For me, really walking the talk is being there, is living it. It's not about raising fund is great, but I just found it so controversial to do that on red carpet and all. And good for them, whoever does that. But to me, this is how I do it. I would go to Vietnam because I want to feel, I want to learn. I don't go there to help. When I spend time with these women, empathizing with them makes me learn a lot of virtues that they have, the strength of the mind, the adaptability, the agility that they have. To really, these are leaders to me. They lead life, all of these. So being part of all these stops, whether in Vietnam or in Silicon Valley or in the refugee camps in Lebanon, all of this is what helps me see what is needed and what kind of initiatives we need to keep doing to impact. It's not just about us. And that made me also define success. So when people tell me, how do you measure success? Everybody measures success differently. Some people could measure success with the number of zeros behind after the one on the right of the one that they made, which is great. But to me, I came out to the conclusion that I want to measure my success with the number of people that I can impact positively, which could make me money along the way. However, the money is what makes me survive and sustain. But the success, for me, the indicator of success is the number of people, like you see here, the number of people that I can say, I have helped them, even in a small way. I could help them be better at who they are or at what they do. And it could range from this woman in Vietnam to a CEO, but contributing to helping people do what they do better. Or be better is to me as the measure of success. And so all of that finally to come to my business. My business is called Sustained Leadership. Now you can see why it's called Sustained Leadership, because it's about sustaining the leadership. It's about helping everyone sustain their leadership, because the world is changing. It's no longer about continuing on being, you could be great, but it's not about being great. It's about being relevant in these changing times. And it's also about helping drive positive impact in business. It's bringing more of the social element to the business. We don't have to be just about profit. and then say, okay, well, let me take 1%, 2%, and then do good with that. No, for me, when I work with entrepreneurs, or even when I advise government policymakers, it's the model for the future for me. And I think that going through COVID-19 really confirmed that, is that it's embedding the good, embedding the positive in your business model. So what, be it using recyclable products if you are producing products, being inclusive by buying from underprivileged communities, or by buying from small businesses, or by including people with determination, or the minorities. The good has to be part of how you do business every day, not I do business and I make profits and then I see what kind of charity I want to connect with. To me, that's what sustained leadership stands for. And if you ever wondered what the logo means, if you can see the first part was inspired from the creative process. When you look at a spiral, because we are in a spiral and we keep transforming. So that's the first part. The second part is we need to be resilient and take shapes. We cannot have any shape. So we are in a continuous change if we really want to sustain the leadership. And together we're having a head and a body. So it's about building human-centric organizations. So that's what sustained leadership is about. And I so went to that journey that about a month ago, it hit me. They say, you become the change that you want to see in the world, right? I think it was Gandhi who said that. And it's so true. When you are so, I wouldn't say even passionate, when you are so obsessed about the change you want to be in the world, you become it. And then a month ago, it hit me that my initials, HB, could stand for humanizing business, because that's exactly what I want to do. Building human-centric organization, bringing the positive impact in business. And then I thought, it is about humanizing business. Wait a second, those are my initials. So I became what I want to achieve. And with that, the latest initiatives of what's coming is my book that's going to, actually it's in the final stages. I only insisted on announcing it on February 3rd, because February 3rd was the 10th anniversary of the passing of my dad. And I wanted to mark it as a tribute, because it's called Seeds of Change. And to me, he's the one who planted these seeds, because he was an entrepreneur himself. He's a self-made man. He was a self-made man. He did a lot of work with the community. He was in the farming business. So I grew up. So obviously it made only sense to call my book Seeds of Change, but also Seeds is a framework that I use in the work I do. So it's an acronym for sense, because we need to sense what's happening. As I said earlier, we cannot just use the intelligence here. We need to use the intuition, because the world we live in is so unpredictable. So that's the framework I talk about in my book. So it's about sensing, it's about engaging. We cannot just take the decision from up down, even to customers. You can't just create a product and go push it anymore. You have to go outside in and see what the people are wanting before you introduce a business or a product or a service. Empowering, because you cannot, leadership is no longer, for me, it's not an authority or a role, but it's a capacity that needs to be spread across the organization. And again, I prove it with what happened in COVID-19, because the decision had to be made so fast, because we had to deal with crisis. If you waited to look at so many hierarchies, you're gone as a business or even as a government. So the future, the business model of the future is about empowering so many people, making the hierarchy flatter so that many has that leadership and authority to take some decisions to a certain extent, rather than a one-man show or a one-man decision. D is about development. We need to continuously develop, embrace that growth mindset, because we don't want to be the Nokias of the world. You could be giants, but tomorrow you're nothing unless you continue on developing new ideas, new ways, new processes. And the last S is sustain, which is the outcome. Once that you would achieve the first seed, when you sense what's needed, when you engage people to make it happen, when you empower them to make the decision, when you develop that product, how do you sustain it? So all of that comes in a book as an advice and a detailed framework. And at the end, I thought, why am I doing, I hope I'm not running, no, I'm not running overtime, right, Kadila?
No,
No.
you're
Good. I think I'm right. I did it right with the time. So then, as you heard Cardilla talk about tawazun, and please check it out. It's tawazun as it's written.com. Tawazun means balance. It's the word balance in Arabic. If you check on Google Translate, even Google Translate, who makes a lot of mistakes, cannot make this mistake. So tawazun means balance in Arabic. The logo is the letter T in Arabic. Okay, but the logo again was created, and this was the idea, is that when you look at it, it looks like a smile, but at the same time, those two dots that make the Arabic letter, the dots were converted into dialogue box, because it's through dialogue that we create balance, and dialogue with different people, whether different genders, different ethnicities. Initially, to be honest with you, the idea of Tawazun and Candela was there after running Lenin Arabia, which is the Lenin Circle, the Lenin Network regional leader in the Middle East. And it's a global initiative, but we started the first one here, me and my ex-partner in the Dubai, and we meet once a month and share among women, how can we advance the the female talent, how can we advance the gender balance agenda. We learn from each other's challenges, we support each other. This is how I met Cardilla, and you see where we are right now. It's more of a sisterhood as well. But then I thought, on the 5th anniversary of Lenin, I thought, we've been meeting for so many years, so many months, great. We'd love to keep this space, but again, don't we want to see results? And if we really want to see results, we have to switch the narrative, probably from equality to balance, because it's just it creates a gap. Because at the end of the day, all we want is to create balance. But to create balance, we cannot be just women talking about it. We need to engage the other gender as well. So the idea was, I wanted to create another circle that engages men in the discussion, so that we see what they think from their point of view as well. And how can we together create a balanced environment? And I thought, since there is so much being done in the Western world, let me put the name in Arabic. People will identify with it if I explain it. And we'll create a think tank or a circle or an initiative where men and women meet probably quarterly, and we discuss together and we try to bring solutions. And I launched it March 8th, which was the last time I stood on a stage last year, before we went all on lockdown, and the rest, you know it. And I thought, we are launching Tawazun. It's going to be this, and that, about women, about changing the narrative of gender equality to gender balance, about engaging men, about making it more of a human-centric rather than gender-centric, making it more of a together rather than us versus them. So that was the idea. But then when everything went to freeze, I started looking at the patterns from what happened with the lockdown. I found, oh my God, there are a lot of imbalances in the world that were exposed with this crisis. Imbalances, work and life balance, which I always call life balance, because I believe work is part of life. Gender balance, obviously, environment balance, the rich and the poor. There are so many imbalances. And I thought, wait a second, let's expand this initiative to just creating a balanced world. Gender balance will be an important part, but it's not limited to that, because we need balanced people first that will contribute to this balanced world. We need a balanced world in so many fronts. So Tawazun was launched just a few weeks back with just a minimum information, and I'll tell you why right now, because I don't want to create something and then, again, I need to practice what I preach. When I talked about sensing in my seeds framework, it's an outside-in approach. So I don't know what people think what balance means. I don't want to start big initiatives before knowing what people think about it. So for now, it's more of an announcement and a call for action from whoever wants to really contribute to creating a balanced world, to come to the website and answer those questions. We're going to keep it there probably until March 8th, and answer what is balance and how do they achieve balance, and what does a balanced world mean or looks like to them. So when we have a certain, an interesting or realistic number, an important number of answers, we want to see the patterns. What are people talking about? Where do they feel that we need to work on balance? And from there, we come up with results and say, we asked, this is not our idea, we're just incubating it, just like that logo. We're just holding that space for whoever wants to be part of it. We're just taking the initiative. but we're inviting everyone, whether you can share your tips. If you are a coach, if you're somebody who learned how to live a balanced life, or if somebody who has initiatives that are really contributing to a balanced world, come and tell us how you're doing it. How can you encourage more people? How can you invite more people to be part of your initiative or business? Even in business, it doesn't have to be, again, like I said, today the model is not about having profit making and non-for-profit. No, for me, my dream is to create all businesses. Our business model of the future is to have that combined. So Tawazun for now would be that incubating space that gathers people who want to contribute to the balanced world. We share, it's a think tank, we explore, and then we see how it emerges. It doesn't have a clear destination. The world is foggy. The other day I took a picture from next to my house. I live downtown, and then usually I wake up and as soon as I go out, I can see the Burj, and he was nowhere to be seen. And I thought, oh my God, this is a sign from the universe. This is the future. You're so used to waking up and moving, going out, and you see the Burj so high, you cannot miss it. Even that is not visible. That's the future, is not visible. And I asked myself, Hanaan, are you willing to lead a life and with ambiguity and be at ease with ambiguity? Well, I either have to do that or die, because the future is just like that last week of fog. And I think it was a sign. We're not going to always be able to see far from here. We have to be willing to take it step by step and to be ready and resilient to shape up as it goes in order to be relevant and to continue. So Tawazun is helping with that, because I think what we are all striving today to achieve is to live a balanced life, is to create a balanced world, to contribute to a balanced world. So that was it for me. And I'm also finishing with a picture. You see, I think I want to thank my parents for giving me this name, because you know what my initials in Arabic mean? Put together. I don't even have to do anything. Just put together. They means hub, and hub means love in Arabic. So I want to close with my initials in Arabic to tell you that I've done this with love, and thank you for listening to me. And to me, all we need is really to love what we do, to love other people, to give to others with love, and then all the other results will be the outcome. Thank you for listening to me. I think I went over by 4 minutes, but that's not much.
Thank you so much, Hanaan. Your second Ferris wheel stop was an interesting journey. It's just that it's the root of where your passion comes from, and without even realizing it, it's kind of amazing. Just a quick question for me, so that they will know as well. As what you said, March 8th is the time that I think you're going to do some putting together all the research that you have done in Tawazun. Yes. But what is the next step? Do you have some sort of event to launch? Yes. And
yes.
Are you going to have some sort of committee, volunteers, or whatever? So that
absolutely. We have different roles that are on the website. We'd love to have advocates, volunteers, whoever have tips of balance, whoever wants to be a strategic partner and be with us, whoever wants to be, later on when we need to have a big event, whoever can suggest to us, even sponsors, whoever. So because we want to go, but for now we're starting small. It's really about understanding. We don't want just to launch something, because as you can see by now, everything I do comes from something that I lived and from real passion and real intention to create some impact. So it's not about just being in the PR and saying, oh, I created a new initiative. And you know that. In Lean in Arabia, I never talk about sustained leadership. Never. I never talk about my business in this space. And you've been there. Yeah. It's really not about that. And you are my witness. It's really about creating all these spaces. And I think we are in need of balance.
With all your initiative, actually, with all your initiative, because I have known you for such quite a lot, like 3 years now. With all your initiative, this combines all together, and it's amazing.
Exactly. So I feel that everything, even the work I do, could fall under this. Tawazun could absorb me as well later on. But for now, all I feel is that I'm only clear, like I said, just like the fog, I'm only clear about the intention is just like the tagline, together for a balanced world. We are open to ideas because this is a think tank. Whoever, please be welcome. We are welcome and free to suggest. For now, we wanted to see what is the pattern. How do people define balance? I would be interested to see the difference words that we'll see. We're going to present it probably in a video or a slide, or we'll have it and say, we asked so many, this is how many people answered. And, you know, this percentage said balance is this, balance is that. Later on, we're going to start doing some polls, and we would love to have your help, everybody, with it. For example, when we talk about balanced life, what do people say?
Mm-hmm.
And then again, have tips and feature people who have tips about how to live balanced life, and create that content that will really help individuals on different levels, on different capacities, contribute to balance. Then we'll move to balanced workplaces. How can we create balanced workplaces in general, whether with inclusion, with the well-being? So many things will start sprouting as we go. And then even environment, how do we contribute to keeping this environment sustainable and balanced and not abusing it? Then we'll start talking about the green stuff. So everything comes under it. We're just going to take it step by step. We want to do it, like I said, an outside-in approach, that whatever we heard from the people, this is what we bring in.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, maybe later on it becomes categories. So we'll have balanced life, gender balance, social elements. We'll see how it grows, and we are open to ideas.
I look forward to be an ambassador for it.
You
I
are
really
already,
love
for sure. Yeah, you are, and everybody's welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I feel like I talked so much.
Is there anyone who wants to ask questions to Hanane?
Thank you, Ashley.
Hanane, thank you so much. It was such an interesting session, especially all of us go through different journeys, but, you know, putting that together and bringing that, you know, the aspects of life and the energy and the passion, and yet, you know, all the things, we all know it, have gone through it, but hearing, as you said, you know, in the earlier lives when you didn't have somebody to look up to, or stereotypes that went wrong. So all those things, I mean, I think you just said it so beautifully, and it's inspired. And the most important thing, which was actually also pulled me to this talk, was the concept of balance.
Yeah.
Because, you know, having worked in corporates and all that, all the time I always see in various aspects, as you said, it's unending. The balance, the concept of balance is unending. It's not about gender. It's not about one aspect of good work or work-life balance, etc. It's very, very interesting of your initiative. I think it's so creative, but yet inclusive, and how you've weaved in each aspect of your life to the journeys. And so not just sharing it, but I think living it is extremely inspirational. I love your concept of seeds. It's not just, again, just change. And one of my absolute favorite quotes has been Mahatma Gandhi's quote, which says, you know, change yourself first. Yeah. So I think everything you've said resonates so well. It was very, very nice. I have to rush for a meeting, but I'm so happy I was there till the end of the session.
Thank you so much.
So I would love to connect with you, and I would love to be part of our Zoom. So look forward to it.
Perfect.
So thank you, Cardella.
I put the Tawazun website in the chat, so if you can just note it down. Yeah.
No, I will connect with you. Thank you so much, and thanks,
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I'm all over social media. Feel free to find me and connect with me.
Definitely, I will.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Is there any other question? Sally, you're in mute.
It's Sally, I think, but she's in.
Yeah, Sally, would you? Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't. No, I was just about. I had to leave because I have to bring my daughter somewhere. But I just wanted to participate in the last part because it's very interesting what you all said. And Hanane, I'm very curious to see. Put your link on there, and we will all contribute as much as we can. And see if we get some motivations, because we are in this COVID roller coaster and we are a bit lost. Sometimes we don't know how to focus our life. So sometimes it's good to hear people like you also like pushing and looking forward to create new situations and new platforms, and let's see if we can all work out together.
Yeah, that's great. And that's it. Now it's about the collective. I think maybe COVID-19 came to show us that wherever you are, we are in it together. We are in it together.
Right.
This is the first time the whole world is suffering from the same thing at the same time. And if we don't learn from it, that is the power of the collective that works, then what else can we learn? I think
this virus make us all be even more connected.
Yes.
Because wherever you are, this is the only way.
Yeah,
you cannot travel, as you said, we are all locked down. We used to travel, we used to go up and down somehow with kids. We couldn't do that anymore. Let's see when we can be free again to be able to.
Exactly, when we can be free.
That's to get back to what we were. I don't know if we will ever get to there.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have to adapt and learn from situations and create new platforms and new ways of sharing and getting together and be more powerful.
Great. Exactly. Thank you so much, Sally. Appreciate your
you and Cardella are doing a great job. So I hope I can be part of it somehow and you can motivate me as well.
We look forward to we look forward for you to come back to Dubai.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I hope I can